Noon. Welcome to the March 11th, 2025 regular meeting of the Salina Public Schools Board of Education. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There are no needed additions or corrections to the agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Dan, second by Ann. Any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. On to recognitions and presentations. First with You Make a Difference Awards with Jennifer Camion.
Good evening. Staff members are nominated by colleagues to receive a You Make a Difference Award for their support of students and the mission of Salina Public Schools. Board of Education members surprise recipients during the workday with a lapel pin and a handwritten note. Tasha Phillips, Heartland Early Education HR Manager. Tasha went above and beyond helping the district HR team during the transition from Alio to Skyward. After she finished with Heartland Employee Data, she entered district hires, transfers, and terminations into the Skyward for Business software. Her help is greatly appreciated. Thank you, Tasha, for making a difference. Jackie Hogan, Food Service Clerk at Coronado Elementary. Always hardworking, calm, and with a positive outlook, Jackie is a lunchroom standout. Her organization and planning skills are wonderful. She devised a Thanksgiving lunch spreadsheet to keep track of people, invented great ways to organize lunch cards, and much more. Thank you, Jackie, for making a difference. Anna Albers, grade 5 teacher at Huesner Elementary School. Anna's leadership as Huesner staff embraced visible learning has been impressive. Her work in supporting teacher and student clarity is a part of creating a stronger learning environment for everyone. We appreciate Anna's dedication and thank her for making a difference. Kennedy Elliott, special education teacher at South Middle School. From starting a coffee cart service for her students to run, take orders, and deliver product, to creating a K Club at South Middle, Kennedy creates a great environment for students to learn and grow. Her focus on belonging inspires all students to reach for the stars. Thank you for making a difference, Kennedy. Yasmin Cortez, bilingual support staff, South Middle School. Yasmin is a champion for her students, especially those who may not know any English. Her students quickly learn how generous she is with smiles and caring in her heart. She works hard to connect families with resources so they feel welcomed and at ease. Muchas gracias, Yasmin, for making a difference every day. Tonight, we'll also celebrate our Teachers of the Year. First, I am pleased to introduce our Elementary Teacher of the Year, Laura Bond, first grade teacher at Oakdale Elementary School. Laura, would you please come to the podium?
Well, hello. So I thought I was going to be one of the cool kids and put my notes on my phone, which probably makes my younger colleagues laugh. Now I'm wishing I had printed them at size 46 font. This will be short and sweet, partly because it's far more nerve-wracking than you would think to speak in front of adults, even though for over 20 years I do it in front of kids all the time. My name's Laura Hoffert Bond, and I've been teaching at Oakdale Elementary School for, I believe, 21 years. It was really a surprise and an honor to get this recognition, especially given there are so many outstanding teachers in our district. A humbling surprise, to say the least. I come from a family of teachers, and my youngest brother was also recognized in his region for Coach of the Year up in Minnesota, and our father, who's a retired teacher, was tickled pink because he was also a coach. So it's been a big year in our teacher family. I wanted to say that I really appreciate the leadership that we've had in our district. Mrs. Exline, you will be missed. You're an inspiration. Not to mention the leadership in my building. It's phenomenal. There's a big difference between a boss and a leader. And Principal Dortzweiler and Mrs. Mayorga are incredible examples of what leadership is. The team that I work with every day makes it a pleasure to come to work. So between their leadership and the family that I have in my team, it's a pleasure. I take a lot of pride in knowing that I work at a school that serves students with so many high needs. And every day brings new challenges. And although I'm the teacher, it's often the students that give me the most valuable lessons at the end of the day. And I really think seeing the world through the eyes of 6- and 7-year-olds is something that everybody should get to experience. So I guess in closing, short and sweet, I wasn't kidding. I do want to thank the board again for giving me this opportunity to stand here tonight and for the recognition. And thank the people that have supported me all these years. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Now I invite our secondary teacher of the year, Mandy Ettinger, special education teacher at Lakewood Middle School, to the podium.
I've known that I would like to be a teacher since Mrs. Thompson's first grade class at Whittier Elementary School here in Salina. Mrs. DeForest at Roosevelt Lincoln Junior High encouraged me towards teaching English. The infinite patience that Central High School debate and forensics coach Gary Harmon showed me, this really shy kid, has had significant impact on my ability to stand in front of a classroom and now in front of my peers. I've been surrounded by amazing educators who have challenged and championed me. I am so thankful that Mrs. Mortimer with CKCIE saw potential in me to transition from an English teacher to a special education teacher. While I loved teaching English, I think special education, and especially the populations that I serve, is my true passion. I am proud to be both a product and a part of Salina USD 305 schools. I know that my success as a teacher is in large part due to those who guide me along the way, as well as those who now stand beside me. Lakewood Middle School has amazing staff, but it is the staff that I work with day to day that make what we do attainable. This year, we took on both the vocational program as well as the behavioral program. It was a little rough, especially there at the beginning. Mr. Kenyon, my teaching partner, would get quick snippets of what we were needing to do as I was off to put out another fire, and he just rolled with it. And as things settled in, I would let him know what I hadn't gotten done yet, and he would reply, "I know, I already did it." Mr. Kenyon is one of a kind, and I couldn't have made it through this year without him. Our paras and our sped techs are phenomenal. Mrs. Reeser, Mrs. Rhodes, Mrs. Cooper, Mrs. Toman, Mrs. Humphreys, Mrs. Hall, Mr. Clem, and Mr. Quinn. Every day they go above and beyond and do what is right for students. I am thankful that I get to work with such amazing students. Our students are funny and challenging and kind. They are learning and growing so much. They are a population that have significant challenges in their future, but they are a population who are deserving of the best that we can give them. In the spring, I get to work with our South and Central swim teams. These ladies are such a boost to me as we end the school year. It is exciting to watch their progress throughout the season. While not quite adults, you can see firsthand the amazing people they are growing up to be. It is so rewarding to work with these students. I am honored to be selected as USD 305 Secondary Teacher of the Year, and it is uplifting to be noticed for the work that you love to do. Pablo Picasso said, "The meaning of life is to find your gift. The purpose of life is to give it away." Thank you for the opportunity to daily give a learning space to so many remarkable individuals.
Thank you, Mandy. Our Teachers of the Year receive a $1,000 check, the H.E. and Irma Lee Nuss Teacher of the Year Award, in recognition of their efforts on behalf of Salina Public Schools. This is the 33rd year for these awards, made possible by the Nuss family. We are honored to have Lawton Nuss, retired Chief Justice of the Kansas Supreme Court, joining us. I now invite Justice Nuss to the podium to speak about his family's legacy with the Nuss Teacher of the Year Award.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to tell you a little bit about the two people whose names grace this award, my parents. Irma Lee Crumry and H.E. Nuss were both born on farms in western Kansas in the 1920s. Neither one of their fathers went past the 6th grade. Neither one of their mothers went past the 8th grade. It was just a sign of those times for a farm family. But after my mother graduated from the 8th grade, it was determined that she was no longer going to go to the little town of Offerley, which had no high school, but she would have to be driven by her father to the big city of Spearville, Kansas. And it was decided that because it was 30 miles there, 30 miles back to take her to school, 30 miles there and back the afternoon for my grandfather to pick her up, that he could not get his farm work done. So it was decided that she would go live with her German grandmother in San Antonio. When she got there, she presented her credentials to start 9th grade, and the school authorities there basically said, you went to a podunk school in western Kansas, you're not ready for high school, you'll have to repeat the 8th grade. So she dutifully did as she was requested, and when she was 16, she graduated from their high school. She then came back to Southwest Kansas. She enrolled in the Dodge City Junior College, and when she finished her 2-year degree, she was now 18 years old, and under Kansas law at that time, during the World War II, she was entitled to teach. She signed her first teaching contract when she was 18 years old. Her job was to teach in a one-room schoolhouse a few miles from her parents' house. So she lived at home, and she rode her horse to the school to go to work, and she rode it back to her parents' house when she was done, weather permitting. After a few years of that, she decided that she wanted to better herself, and she wanted to get a 4-year degree. So she then enrolled at what was then called Fort Hays State College. In the meantime, my father graduated from high school in La Crosse. His parents had no money, but he got a basketball scholarship at Pratt Junior College. And he had been there for a while. World War II broke out. He eventually left school to go into the Navy, and he finished the war as a naval aviator. He was released from active duty, and so he then went to Fort Hays to finish his education. That's where he and my mother met. They got married in 1947. That fall, they got their first teaching jobs in Hill City. A friend of mine from Hill City sent me the annual from the 47-48 school year, and I'll pass it around. I've tabbed the page so you can see my parents in their first teaching positions. And it shows my mother was basically a grade school art teacher, and my dad taught mechanical drawing and shop. Well, after a few years, my dad said, I want to get a master's degree. So they packed up, moved to Manhattan, where he enrolled at K-State, and the Great Flood of 1951 flooded them out. They picked up what few possessions they had remaining, and they came to Salina, where his parents lived, and his father, who was by that time a carpenter, got my dad a job as a carpenter for a construction company here in town. After a couple years of that, my dad basically got a long-term sub position at St. John's Military School. They moved there in 1953. Well, St. John's had no place for an elementary art teacher. So they approached my mother and said, here's a box of books, would you start a library here? Well, she knew nothing about it, but she dutifully took some library science courses at what was then Marymount College, and she then became qualified to be the school librarian, basically grades 7 through 12. In the mid-60s, My dad said, you know, it's been 15 years since I had to quit getting my master's degree. I want to go back and get it. So for 2 or 3 summers, he commuted to Manhattan, got his master's degree. He then left St. John's, and he became an assistant principal at what was then Salina High School. My mother followed suit a couple years later, and she had been basically a high school librarian at St. John's. She now joined USA 305 as an elementary school librarian at Huesner and Sunset are 2 of the schools that she worked at. My dad stayed at Central until his death in 1979. He had spent about 30 years as a Kansas educator. And my mother retired from USD 305. She died in 2018, and she spent over 40 years as a Kansas educator. Now, I mention all this not only to tell you a little bit of their background, but to say I'm not telling you this because my parents were extraordinary. They were simply doing what educators do, from my experience. There are obstacles thrown in your way, and you meet those obstacles, and you go through them, or you go over them, or you go around them, or you find another path. If there's no place for an art teacher of elementary students, then you become a librarian. If the war intervenes on your life, then you take a 2 or 3 year hiatus from getting your education, and then you come back. So I don't want to repeat all those things, but I just want to say that's what part of this award is based on, that teachers and educators who do what is required for their students, and it's just such a great honor, I believe, and a privilege for people to be able to make such an influence on so many young lives. Let me finish with this, and somebody already stole my thunder, but that's okay. When I was here a year ago, I asked the board's permission if I could raise the Teacher's Award from $500 per teacher to $1,000. You consulted with your board legal counsel, and you got the nod. And so today, and henceforth for at least a while, the award will be $1,000 per teacher. And as I told some folks earlier, with the price of eggs these days, that's going to make a big difference. That award may increase as years go by, but for a while it's going to be there. So I'm very pleased to be able to make this award presentation on behalf of my parents, and they would be thrilled to be able to hear they have this award. My dad died before we started it, but my mother was aware of it. She's not aware of the price increase, but that's okay. So I will be quiet, and I'll stand back and wait for the formal presentation.
Superintendent Epstein, if you'd like to join Justice Nuss right over here in front of these bags on the other side of the table. There you go.
She's the superintendent.
Mandy and Laura, if you would join them in the front, please. We have special gifts and recognitions to present to our Teachers of the Year. In addition to the $1,000 H.E. and Irma Lee Nuss Teacher of the Year Award, in the gift bag is a custom-made watch co-sponsored by Jeff Heline, Jostens, and a gift certificate donated by Tony Dong, Martinelli's. We greatly appreciate your support of this program. An engraved plaque is presented to them, and their pictures have been hung in the Hall of Excellence outside of this room. Your names have been added to the perpetual plaque. Congratulations, and we would like to get a picture before the board congratulates you.
Thank you to both our Teacher of the Year award winners and their families for being here. And I know you had team members and building reps as well. And thank you to all of you for all you do, and our great faculty across the district. It's great to be able to honor the awesome work happening every day in our classrooms. Moving on, with additional recognitions and presentations, item 4C, we have a visible learning update with Lori Munsell in Hughesner Elementary School.
Okay, so I brought two people with me. Mrs. Marshall, or Jen Marshall, is our math coach, and Janae Bren is our reading coach. And we are excited to share with you our journey with visible learning at Hughesner. One of the Hughesner victories when it comes to creating visible learners includes our work with learning dispositions. So we asked students at the very beginning of this journey, we said, hey, what does it mean to be a good learner at Hughesner Elementary? And to our surprise, they said a lot of things about compliance. And so they talked about being at a level 0 and doing the right thing and showing pride. We talk a lot about pride at Hughesner. But we wanted it to go a little bit deeper, and we wanted them to start talking about what does it mean to be a good learner. And so we came together with parents and PTO and site council, and we started to say, you know, what does that look like at Hughesner? And you can see up there we have being curious, being a communicator, showing self-control are some ways. And then we decided, okay, how are we going to teach this to kids? How are we going to let them get their hands messy with what it means to be a visible learner? And so we started with I Am Curious, and we kicked it off with the book, The Curious Why. And you can see those bright little faces. We have Pride families at Hughesner Elementary, and our Pride families are a way that we take our school community and we divide it into smaller. So we have like 2 5th graders and 2 4th graders and 2 3rd graders and 2 kindergartners all the way down, and then they stay together in this family unit all the way through their years at Hughesner Elementary. And so our PTA, the Legos there, our PTA partnered with us and purchased these luggage, and so part of being a curious why is they had to create these zoo animals within this Pride family time. So it's multi-grade, and you can see them falling in love with being curious. You can also see this is embracing challenges. Oftentimes we connect something with reading first, and so they had to create a balloon dog after reading The Magical Yet and having a growth mindset to figure out how to do that. And then I Am a Communicator. This is our 4th year using STEM at Hughesner, and STEM really shows it's integrating science and technology, and it's really getting kids talking about solving problems. And so they read the book, we read Rapunzel, and then they had to figure out how do we get her out of the tower, was one of the things that they did. And then I Have Self-Control. We brought parents in, and we played board games, and we talked about what it means to be regulated and to wait our turn and to handle disappointment. And so our school community has really come together around these 4 learning dispositions. And then teachers have embraced, like, how do we take those learning dispositions and actually make them come alive during learning? And so this is kind of a hard picture to see, but one of our teachers has these plastic sleeves, and as she sees someone, like during a math lesson, embracing a challenge, she gives them, there's little counters in there, she gives them a little counter, and they go in and they drop it in. And so over time, teachers are trying to find ways to show that during our learning, this is what it means to be a good learner at Hughesner. And then this is our Visible Learning Leadership Team that we meet across with one of our district sessions. And the cool thing about our Visible Learning Leadership Team is they're outside-the-box thinkers. And so as we first got started thinking about learning intentions and success criteria as adults and realizing we're going to have some learning to do on our own, they said, hey, we're gonna do something fun. Let's create this learning bingo. And then as you're in and out of classrooms, you're going to dob it. So grade level teams work together, and they were trying to complete a bingo, which earn them a dress down day, which is also motivating for staff. So, and then as we're in and out of classrooms, what we're really looking for are our students, our learning intentions, our success criteria, but even more importantly is the student voice piece. And that part is saying, what are you learning? Why are you learning it? How will you know when you have learned it? And then we have professional learning communities that meet twice every week, a math one and a reading one. And we've really tried to shift our adult learning. And so we've started infusing these 5 questions as part of our professional learning community work with teachers. So I'm going to let Jen and Janae talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so our question 1, where are we going? In PLCs, we are focused on that teacher clarity, and we know that has an effect size of 0.85. So we are focused on the standards, exactly what we're teaching, making sure we're reviewing those standards and making sure we're teaching to the rigor of those standards. And so that means for teachers that they really need to deeply know what they're teaching. So the learning intentions is a good way to review that as we're looking at what we're teaching, and then just making sure that we've clarified for ourselves so that we can clarify for our students what those success criteria are. So up on the screen you see some examples of some math learning intentions and success criteria at different grade levels. They are just kind of given some freedom to post how they would like, some type it up, some write. Actually, the cool example on the left is a 5th grade example, and so they've given kids the learning intention and success criteria. They have their own individual copies, and so kids have really latched onto that, and they are aware of where they are in their learning and can kind of reflect where they are at according to the success criteria.
Okay, so for where we are going for reading, the top is an example of the learning intentions and success criteria for reading. And so the teachers that have this posted on their screens throughout the whole lesson, so if the kids want to know what they're talking about, keeping their success criteria right there with them the whole time. And so you can see the poster on the left is we've been using HMH, their Instant Reading Curriculum, now for 3 years. And so we're purposeful when we're creating our success criteria that we use the same wordage and vocabulary that's in those posters and those anchor charts. So that way when the teacher is looking at their curriculum resource, they can say, okay, we're looking at this anchor chart, and so this is what our success criteria is. So we're trying to mirror those 2 pieces to make it real super for teacher clarity and student clarity. And then on the bottom right, that's also the lower elementary. So it's how we formatted for that particular grade levels. And so we're just trying to be purposeful so the teachers know where they're going, the students can see where they're headed. And a success would be, as we're having these posted, we're trying to move away from just having them posted, but kids interact with them, and so they can see, okay, this is where I'm at for this particular criteria. I'm moving up the ring or up the ladder. I'm going down up the ladder. They can kind of see exactly where they're at. But we wanted to get more to interacting with it on a daily basis instead of just having them posted on the wall as, a pretty poster, but the kids can actually interact with it. And then another piece we're looking at is where we are now. So in our PLCs, we do a lot of talk about data. For one thing we do for the elementary, for the younger grades, K through 2, we still use the reading diagnostic assessments that we have here as a district. And so we're really purposeful as we test those students fall, winter, spring. We look at what holes they have in their phonics and their phonemic awareness and their high frequency words. And so when we look at what instruction needs to happen, we look at that specific because we know as readers they have to have those basic skills and foundational skills mastered before they can become successful readers and very good at comprehending. So we start at the basics for the younger grades, and then in the older grades we look at their end-of-module assessments that we have in our HMH reading, and then we look at that to determine maybe in this whole class or in this whole grade level a certain standard wasn't very well overall, so we think what we need to do as a class or a grade to make that have mastery. So we're really intentional with our data to make sure we know where we are and what we need to do, because we don't want to waste our time teaching students something they already know and they've mastered, because that's just a waste of time, and we know our teaching minutes are super valuable. So we use that kind of question quite a bit to drive our data discussions.
So question 3, how do we move learning forward? So once we have that data, we are focused on what evidence-based actions that we can take moving forward to support the learning for all kids. So in PLCs, we are always engaged in conversations about that effective instruction. We're talking about what are the opportunities for kids to learn, how can we maximize those minutes, and how do we remove barriers. So things like intervention time or small group time, where we have kids, as you see pictured, in small groups, getting exactly what they need, because we've identified those lagging skills for each kiddo. Okay, and then question 4, what did we learn today? So really that's for teachers to kind of pause and reflect and determine if students learned what was intended for that day. If not, why? What was the barrier? What can we do to remedy that? And then what are things that worked? Let's do that again. Let's make notes about what worked for kids. And in the pictures, you see some teachers have kind of taken that and almost turned that over to kids too. Like, we want their voice to be heard. So they are asked to reflect, what did you learn today? And so that gives us even more information on their learning and understanding of what was taught. Okay, question number 5. Who benefited and who did not? So in asking this question, we look for trends, we look for patterns in the achievement of all kids. And then this leads us to some decisions that we need to make. Do kids need to be receiving extension? Do they need to be receiving some intervention? What does that look like so that we can remove all barriers for kids to be able to show growth? So we're looking at those patterns. It's led us to kind of a walk to intervention time where we are providing some support 4 days a week for some of our struggling learners. And we are kind of creating that as we go. But we've seen great growth and just an opportunity for kids to have just a maximum number of minutes to be able to learn.
Yeah, so along with them reading for the who benefited and who did not, we do the same thing for walk to intervention for reading. We have 4 days a week where the kids get to come for 4 days. And so we look at those phonics goals that they're missing, and we're using the UFly curriculum, and it's a very strategic, systematic phonics instruction, and it builds, there's a writing and spelling and reading to connected text, and so it's all embedded in that curriculum, systematic. And so we've seen as the kids get those holes shored up, we've really seen some great success in our as we test them for their reading diagnostics, that is transferring into their assessments that we do to make sure. And we also progress monitor these kids as well every 2 to 3 weeks, so we make sure that instruction that we're giving during that small group time is making an impact and that there is growth happening. So we're really purposeful on that progress monitoring piece to watch to see what's happening. So anyway, I think there are a lot of great things happening, and so we're just trying to make sure we're using all the information we have to do the best we can for kids that we have the pleasure to work with every day.
So just to kind of bring it to a close, we in December, district came out and we did some walkthroughs in all of our classrooms. We visited 22 classrooms. 100% of the classrooms had learning intentions present, and 96% of classrooms had success criteria. And that's a good first step, but we really want to move to student voice. So that's kind of our next steps is, we want students to be able to articulate. I think we had about 68% last time, and I think it's going to be higher than that this time. We just got done doing another one where students are able to articulate what they are learning. And then the 2 next steps would be students knowing why they're learning it, and then really connecting so that they know when they've learned it, and they're connecting that to that success criteria. So we have a couple of next steps. Any questions?
Questions from anybody?
Sounds great.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you all being here. On to item 5, approval of the consent agenda. Those items this evening are minutes of the special meetings held February 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, and 17th. Minutes of the regular meeting on February 18th, the personnel report, the financial reports, including the February bills list, January treasurer's report, January investment report, and January journal entries. Approval of the following encumbrance listings. First to Dell in the amount of $32,125 for the purchase of laptops for CKCIE. To Eagle Technologies in the amount of $237,814.12 for the renewal of Arctic Wolf, the district cybersecurity management system. To Next Tech Business for the dark fiber wide area network contract in the amount of $410,040. To Corwin Stage Publishing in the amount of $528,095 for year 3 of the Visible Learning Plan professional development. To Contract Paper Group for copy paper in the amount of $24,973.20, and to Jones Gillum Rents Architects in the amount of $37,925.77 for architectural and construction management services for renovations to Kitchen 2. Approval of the third-party administrator contract to U.S. Omni and TSACG compliance services for the district's 403B retirement plan. Approval of the contract addendum with Mammoth Sports Construction for an increase of $51,000, bringing the revised contract amount to $1,080,000. Approval of the South High School fundraising activity for the track and field program. Approval of the ESEA school improvement grant application in the amount of $246,558. Approval of the McKinney-Vento grant application in the amount of $9,800. Approval of the federal Head Start Early Head Start grant application in the amount of $6,041,582 with a 25% match of $1,510,396. Approval of the preschool at-risk grant application, funding at 0.5 feet FTE. And approval of the Kansas Parents as Teachers Program grant continuation application in the amount of $97,550 with a $51,534 match. Is there a motion to approve? Sir.
I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thanks. In a second.
Second.
And seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. On to, we do not have anyone who requested to speak at public forum, so on to item 7A on our action agenda, board team for negotiations with certified personnel with Aaron Wright.
Good evening. It's that time of year again. I'm here to request that you all appoint your negotiations team for the 25-26 school year to engage in negotiations of the negotiated agreement with the certified teachers here in the district. We are recommending that you appoint myself, Lisa Peters, and 2 board members, please.
Is there a motion?
Mr. President, I move we appoint Aaron and Lisa and Gabe and Jim to be our negotiations team.
Thank you. Is there a second? Scott seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.
Yep. On 7B.
Okay. We also, while we don't engage in a formal negotiations process resulting in a contract, we do also engage in the meet and confer process with our classified staff to discuss the conditions of employment, specifically the provisions within the support staff handbook. We would like you to appoint a team for that as well, to include myself, Lisa Peters, and Steve Dorsweiler, along with 2 board members.
Is there a motion?
Mr. President,
Sir.
I move that we appoint Aaron Wright, Lisa Peters, Steve Dorsweiler, Dan Acosta, and Scott Gardner for meet and confer.
Thank you. Is there a second? And seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And also on the action agenda, item 7C, assessment review for budget considerations with Superintendent Exline.
Thank you. You'll recall that as part of the needs assessment process that is required for the budget process by the state of Kansas, that you spent time with our principals reviewing all of the building needs assessments during a recent work session. The next step in that process is that the board has to answer 3 questions. The first question is that the board has to, using the totality of what you reviewed, identify the barriers that must be overcome for each student to achieve grade level proficiency on assessments, and we did that during the meeting. Identify budget actions that should be taken to address and remove those barriers. We talked about possible budget actions during that meeting. And then identify the amount of time that the board estimates it will take for each student to be at grade level proficiency if the budget actions are implemented. So a draft copy of answers to those 3 based upon the discussion and the needs assessment review is actually in your packet. And I need either feedback on that to make adjustments, or if it does reflect adequately what it is that you were thinking after that needs assessment conversation, then I need to have an approval. After those are approved, we will put all of the building needs assessments and the answers to those questions on our website as required, where the public can find them and they can review all that information. The prior needs assessment and answers to these questions are already available on the website. We would just add this year's. So questions, comments, concerns, or a recommendation to go ahead and move forward with those answers is what I need right now.
Mr.
Questions,
President,
comments, concerns?
I wanted to comment that I really love this idea that if we did all of these things, and we fully funded full-day preschool universally for 3- and 4-year-olds and early childhood learning, then every kid born today on would have all that they need to get to where we want them to go. So that's the 2043, 18 years from now. It could happen if we did these things. I just really like that idea.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? Yes, sir.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the assessment review for budget considerations document as presented.
Thanks. Deanna seconds. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. On our discussion agenda tonight, just one item, item 8A, 2025-2026 Athletic Handbook.
Thank you, Mr. President. So each spring, we actually review handbooks, and the board gives their approval for any updates and changes. Tonight, I have before you on the discussion agenda the athletic handbook for next year, and I just want to highlight what the changes are. The first is that last year, in February, the board actually approved adding wrestling at middle school for girls. Remember, we had always allowed our female students to wrestle, but we split that into a boys and a girls wrestling option, and so we just need to memorialize that in the handbook. The second thing is that high school girls wrestling has just absolutely expanded. It has become really popular, and we are having great success in that program, a lot of involvement, and so we need to adjust our coaching. Our boys and our girls wrestling at high school many times will compete at different venues on the same day, and so we need to make sure that we have a coach because the coaches have to be right by the mat in order for our wrestlers to compete. And so we need to make sure that we have adequate coaching staff for safety and to allow our athletes to be able to participate. So we have added a head assistant to the coaching staff, and we've merged the boys and girls team into one. What will happen is there will be one head coach, and then one of the assistants will be in charge of our female program, okay? And then with the combined boys-girls program, the assistant coach was moved then to the combined program. So you see a couple changes that are all really getting to the same point. With that, I would answer any questions that you have. This is on the discussion agenda, so our intention would be to let you consider this, and we would bring it back next month for final approval.
Questions, comments?
I guess with us separating those programs, is there a need for head girls, head boys? With those being, male and female wrestling are two totally different
Right.
techniques.
They actually do practice together, and so this provides that head coach flexibility to assign coaches based upon the way the practice goes. At some point, we may want to do a head girls coach, but right now, the athletic board is recommending that we use this structure. It could be in 2 years that we come back to you and say, you know what, now we've got a large enough program that we really are ready to go ahead and divide that into two, and that we need to separate practices and everything.
Yes, sir.
I actually went down and watched at state, and those coaches were moving around as much as the athletes were. So they are shorthanded. I don't know if we need to separate them in practice, but I do think that we do need to look at adding to that, because I'm not sure that the girls are getting the time with the coaches that they need as much as the boys are getting. But both did represent Salina, both schools did represent Salina very well at state in Wichita over the weekend. So kudos to them.
Thank you for that. And I will engage in a conversation with our two athletic directors and tell them that we really want them to keep an eye on that, and that and to evaluate if we want to add additional positions. And if they feel like that is necessary, that is something that during the year, there are times where I approve adding a coach. I did that just today because of participation in South High's track program this year. We needed an extra adult out there supporting the students. And so we'll definitely engage in that conversation and have them actively watching that. I too went to the state competition, and you are right, they were hopping.
Other questions, concerns?
I guess the feedback I'd have with that is I wouldn't want it to seem like we're treating the girls wrestling different. We have, I guess softball and baseball are different, but I see those as being separate programs if we're truly separating those programs.
Anything else? Okay. On to item 9, school board reports and upcoming dates of importance. Next month, prior to our board meeting, the Salina Education Foundation reception on April 8th at 4:30 p.m. In the Schmidt Room. Saturday, April 12th, Teacher of the Year Region 1 ceremony at the Tony's Pizza Event Center. April 23rd, the Board of Education has a building visit at South Middle School. Graduation's already appearing on our schedule here. Sunday, May 18th, South at 2 p.m. and Central at 5 p.m. and the Salina Adult Education Center graduation at 7 p.m. on June 26th at Lakewood. Scott, start with you down there for board report.
I attended the Parks and Rec Advisory Board, and I attended the CKCIE Board of Control meeting. I helped to judge a forensics tournament at South High, and I attended the Oakdale tour with other school board members. That's all.
Paul.
Evening. I attended the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board meeting, and we discussed the potential for installation of a fitness court in Salina Parks or in a location around Salina. And if you're wondering what a fitness court is, it's basically a networked fitness jungle gym for adults, if you will, that people get linked into, and they have different competitions and different types of fitness level attaining kind of goal setting events that happen through that. And so they'll have competitions on a networked system through town and through the system across the whole of the nation of fitness courts as a brand. And so that's kind of what it is. And so they were looking at trying to see whether or not it's going to be worth investing in this apparatus to be able to facilitate an additional fitness enhanced culture in Salina. So that was one of the things at the Park and Rec meeting. And then I also attended the Smoky Hill Educational Service Center Executive Board meeting via Zoom due to weather at that time, and we discussed disbursements, financial reports, and personnel, as well as grants and projects updates. And that's all I have to report.
We attended the Oakdale visit this week and then gave out 2 You Make a Difference awards this morning to Kennedy and Yasmin.
I handed out 2 You Make a Difference awards. I attended the Oakdale tour and also the Heartland board meeting.
No report.
Thank you, sir. I too attended the Oakdale visit on Friday. That was great to be in that building and see, again, fantastic things happening in our classrooms all across the district. Dana got a friendship bracelet from a kindergartner. I was not offered the same present, but I'll get over it.
A little brighter.
We'll work harder next time, I guess. I presented a You Make a Difference award to Jackie at Coronado, along with Superintendent Exline, and a large contingent of people from Coronado attended the State Horizons Recognition Lunch in Topeka a couple weeks ago, recognizing our Emma Lindstrom as our district Horizon recipient and a state recognized recipient as well. So on to Superintendent's report. Superintendent Exline.
Okay, just a couple things. We had our district site council. Deanna Collins actually facilitated that, and she did a marvelous job. We shared our KISA action plan, the same action plan that we shared with the board last month. And we also talked about the actions that we had taken based upon their feedback from last year to make sure that they knew that we'd talked about chronic absenteeism. Here are the things that you suggested, and this is what we implemented. And then we sought ideas on motivating students to give their best effort on Kansas assessments so that our scores actually represent the best that they can do. I also wanted to let you know that our Educational Programs Department and building leaders are out on their second round of visible learning walkthroughs. Collecting data. Lori and her team talked about that today, and several people have mentioned that they are already really noticing a difference in students knowing what it is that they're supposed to be learning and being able to talk about the content in a more fluent way. I also wanted to share with you, our second graders were able to go see the circus, and Krista Lindenberger shared with me a couple of the little thank you notes that they had written to the Shriners. And the quality of writing that we have in our classrooms, it was just really cute. They did a great job. So we certainly appreciate the partnership with the Shriners to make that opportunity available, because many of our students wouldn't have the chance to do that. And those community partnerships just really make a difference in what we can provide our kids. And then finally, tomorrow I will be headed to KASB at the State House. Ann Zimmerman is going as well. And I do have meetings scheduled with all of our representatives and with Senator Clays, and reached out to them this afternoon and have time scheduled. So I'm looking forward to being able to visit with them a little bit tomorrow.
Thank you. On to our executive sessions for the evening. First for negotiations. How long are we thinking?
I wrote down 20 minutes. Aaron, does that seem sufficient? Okay.
Anyone want to go? 20 minutes?
Mr. President,
Yes.
I move that the Board of Education go into executive session at 6:30 for 20 minutes for the purpose of discussing employer-employee negotiations, because if this matter were discussed in open session, it might jeopardize resolution of the negotiated issues, and that the Board of Education reconvene into open session at 6:50 in the SEC room.
Second.
And seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. We will reconvene in this room at 6:50. And moving on to our next executive session for student matters, is there a motion?
Mr. President, I move that the Board of Education go into executive session at 6:53 for 10 minutes for the purpose of discussing matters relating to actions adversely or favorably affecting us a person as a student, because if this matter were discussed in open session, it might invade the privacy of those discussed, and that the Board of Education reconvene into open session at 7:03 in the SEC room.
Thanks. There's a second. Paul seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 5-0. We'll be back in open session at 7:03 in this room. We are back in open session. Moving on to our third executive session for personnel.
Mr. President, I move the Board of Education go into executive
We need a
session at
motion.
7:04 for 5 minutes.
We need a motion based upon that last executive session to take action on that.
Okay, we need to move to find the, or move to approve the
Accept the
findings.
hearing officer's finding and decision.
Okay.
I move, Mr. President, I move we accept the hearing officer's finding and what? And decision in the personnel matter. Should
In
I
the
name the
student matter.
student? In a student matter, yes, okay.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 5-0. Now, Ms. Paul, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. President, I move that the Board of Education go into executive session at 7:04 for 5 minutes for the purpose of discussing personnel matters of non-elected personnel and their contractual obligations, because if this matter were discussed in open session, it might invade the privacy of those discussed, and that the Board of Education reconvene in open session at 7:09 in the SEC room.
Thanks, and seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 5-0. We'll be back. Back in open session and have a motion.
Yes, Mr. President, I move that we accept the early resignation of Kim Gwynn and approve her request to waive liquidated damages.
Scott seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. That is the end of our regular meeting agenda. We're going to move into a work session now. We'll end the live stream for this evening. Thank you for joining us. We're in recess.